The Adventure of Charles Augustus Milverton. Years have passed since the events I am about to relate, and yet I must still describe them with great caution. For a long time, it was impossible to make these facts public, even with the utmost restraint and ambiguity. But now, the principal figure has passed beyond the reach of human law, and with appropriate omissions, this story may be told in a way that causes no harm to anyone. It stands as a unique case in the careers of both Sherlock Holmes and myself. The reader will excuse me if I conceal the exact date or any particular fact by which the true participants in this story might be identified. It was a cold, even frost-bound winter evening. Holmes and I had taken one of our evening strolls and returned home around 6 o'clock. When Holmes lit the lamp, the light fell upon a card lying on the table. Glancing at it, he threw it to the floor with an exclamation of disgust. I picked it up and read, Charles Augustus Milverton, Appledore Towers, Hampstead. Agent. Who is he? I asked. The worst man in London, Holmes replied, sitting down and stretching his legs toward the fire. Is there anything written on the back of the card? I turned it over. We'll call at 6:30. Charles Augustus Milverton, I read. He will be here any moment. Have you ever felt, Watson, while standing before the serpents in the zoological gardens, a sense of loathing and revulsion at the sight of those slithering, venomous creatures with their icy gaze and malignant, flat faces? That is exactly the feeling Milverton inspires in me. In the course of my career, I have come into contact with 50 murderers, and the worst of them never elicited the same nausea in me as this fellow. And yet, I cannot avoid dealing with him. In fact, he comes here at my own invitation. But who is he exactly? I will tell you, Watson. He is the king of all blackmailers. Heaven help the man, and still more the woman, whose good name falls into the power of Milverton. Once he possesses their secret, he will squeeze and squeeze them, with a smiling face and a heart of stone, until he has bled them dry. He is a genius in his own way, and in a more honest trade, his brand would have been world famous. His method is this. He spreads word that he is prepared to pay very high prices for letters that compromise people of wealth or high social standing. He receives this merchandise not only from treacherous valets and maids, but often from well-born scoundrels who have won the confidence and affection of women. He conducts his business without stinginess. I know for a fact that he once paid £700 to a valet for a 2-line note, and the result was the ruin of a noble family. Every such piece of stock that comes onto the market finds its way to Milverton, and in this great capital, there are hundreds of people who turn pale at the mention of his name. No one knows who his next victim will be, for he is very rich and very cunning, and he does not need to earn his living every day. He will keep a card in reserve for years, only to play it at the very moment when the stakes are at their highest. I said he was the worst man in London, and I ask you, how can you compare a ruffian who kills his comrade in a fit of rage to this man, who methodically and slowly tortures the soul and wears down the nerves, all to add more gold to his overflowing coffers? I had rarely heard my friend speak with such vehemence. But surely there's the law, I countered. Some remedy must be found against such a man. Theoretically, yes. Practically, no. What use is it to a woman to see him imprisoned for a few months if her own ruin follows immediately? His victims dare not strike back. If he ever attempted to blackmail an innocent person, we would certainly have him. But he is as cunning as the devil himself. No, we must find other ways to fight him. And why is he coming here? A noble client has placed her tragic case in my hands. She is Lady Eva Brackwell, the most beautiful debutante of last season. Her marriage to the Duke of Dovercourt is set for 2 weeks from now. This monster has several indiscreet letters. Only indiscreet, Watson, nothing more, which she wrote to a penniless country squire. These letters are enough to stop the wedding. Milverton will send them to the Duke unless a vast sum of money is paid. I have been commissioned to meet him and, if possible, reach an agreement. At that very moment, the clatter of horses' hooves and the crunch of wheels were heard from the street below. Looking out the window, I saw a magnificent carriage drawn by a pair of bays. The bright glare of its side lamps was reflected upon the shining haunches of the noble animals. A footman opened the door, and a short, stout man in a coat with a Persian lamb collar stepped out. A minute later, he was in our room. Charles Augustus Milverton was a man of about 50, with a large, intellectual head, a round, plump, clean-shaven face, a perpetual frozen smile, and keen gray eyes which twinkled brightly behind large, gold-rimmed spectacles. He might have resembled a benevolent Mr. Pickwick, were it not for that false, painted-on smile and the cold glint in his watchful, penetrating eyes. His voice was soft and pleasant, matching his seemingly good-natured appearance, as he stepped forward with a plump hand extended, expressing his regret that he had missed us on his first visit. Holmes ignored the outstretched hand. His face became as hard and cold as granite. Milverton's smile grew even broader. He shrugged his shoulders, removed his coat, folded it with great care over the back of a chair, and sat down. "This gentleman?" he asked, with a smooth gesture in my direction. "Is this not an indiscretion?" "Dr. Watson is my friend and colleague." "Very good, Mr. Holmes. I protest only in the interest of our client. The matter is so very delicate. Dr. Watson has already heard the details. Then we may proceed to business. You say that you are acting for Lady Eva. Has she empowered you to accept my terms? What are your terms?" £7,000. "And in the event of a refusal?" "My dear sir, it is painful for me to discuss it, but if the money is not paid by the 14th, there will certainly be no wedding on the 18th. His intolerable smile became even more suave. Holmes thought for a moment. "It seems to me," he said at last, "that you are acting with overconfidence. I am aware of the contents of those letters. My client will, of course, act as I advise her, and I shall advise her to tell everything to her future husband and rely upon his generosity." Milverton chuckled. "You evidently do not know the Duke," he said. Looking at Holmes's troubled face, I realized that he did know the Duke. "There is nothing truly sinful in the letters," Holmes remarked. "They are sprightly, very sprightly," Milverton replied. "The lady wrote charmingly. But I assure you that the Duke of Dovercourt would fail to appreciate their wit. However, if you feel otherwise, let us end the matter there. It is a purely business transaction. If you believe your client would benefit by having these letters reach the Duke, then it would be sheer folly on your part to pay such a substantial sum for them." Milverton rose and took up his coat. Holmes turned gray with anger and frustration. "Wait," he said. "You are too hurried. We shall, of course, do all we can to avoid a scandal in so delicate a matter." Milverton sat down again. "I was certain you would come to look at it in that light," he purred. At the same time, Holmes continued, "Lady Eva is not a wealthy woman. I assure you that even £2,000 would be a ruinous sum for her, and the amount you name is utterly beyond her reach. I must, therefore, ask you to moderate your demands and return the letters for the price I have mentioned, which, I give you my word, is all that you can hope to obtain from her." Milverton beamed, a merry light dancing in his eyes. I know that what you say of a lady's means is true, said he. Think of it. This marriage is such a fortunate occasion for her friends and relatives to do something for her. They will be considering a wedding present. Explain to them that this little bundle of letters will bring her more joy than all the candelabra and vases in London. It is impossible, Holmes countered. Dear me, how very sad. Milverton exclaimed, drawing a bulky pocketbook from his pocket. I cannot help but feel that our ladies have poor advisers. They are not taught the necessity of making an effort. Look at this. He pulled a small note from an envelope embossed with a coat of arms. This belongs to, well, it would be indiscreet to say, but tomorrow the name may be spoken freely once this note is in the hands of the lady's husband. And all because she refuses to pay a pittance, a sum she could raise in half an hour by exchanging her diamonds for paste. Such a pity. And surely you recall the sudden breaking off of the engagement between Miss Miles and Colonel Dorking? The Morning Post announced their split just 2 days before the wedding. And why? It seems almost unbelievable, but for a mere £1,200, everything could have been settled. Is it not tragic? And yet you, a man of sense, continue to haggle when the honor and future of your client are at stake. You surprise me, Mr. Holmes. I am stating the facts, Holmes replied. My client simply cannot raise such money. But the sum I offered is substantial. Why reject it and destroy a woman's happiness? It will bring you no profit. Though you are mistaken, Mr. Holmes. Publicity, even indirect, is most beneficial to me. I have 8 or 10 similar cases currently on hand. If word spreads that I have dealt severely with Lady Eva, the others will become far more reasonable. Do you follow me? Holmes sprang from his chair. Get behind him, Watson. Do not let him leave the room. Now, sir, we shall see the contents of that pocketbook. Milverton slipped into the corner as quick as a mouse and backed against the wall. Mr. Holmes, he murmured, turning back the lapel of his frock coat to reveal the butt of a large revolver protruding from an inside pocket. I expected something more original from you. I have faced such situations many times, and they never come to anything. Believe me, I am armed to the teeth and quite prepared to use my weapon, knowing that the law is on my side. Furthermore, I am not so foolish as to bring the actual letters here. So, you have missed your mark again, Mr. Holmes. Good evening, gentlemen. I have 2 more appointments tonight, and it is a long drive to Hampstead. Milverton stepped forward, took his coat from the chair, and, with his hand still upon his revolver, walked toward the door. I gripped a chair, but Holmes shook his head, and I let it go. With a bow, a smile, and a wink, Milverton made a triumphant exit. A few seconds later, we heard the carriage door slam and the rattle of wheels. Holmes sat motionless by the fire, his hands deep in his pockets, his head bowed, and his eyes fixed upon the glowing embers. He remained silent for half an hour. Then, with a sudden movement, he leaped to his feet like a man who has made a decision and went into his bedroom. A few minutes later, a dapper young workman emerged, sporting a goatee and a rakish air. Lighting a clay pipe from the lamp, he turned toward the door. I shall be back soon, Watson, he said, and vanished into the darkness of the night. I realized then that my friend had opened his campaign against Charles Augustus Milverton. But even in my wildest dreams, I could not have imagined the outcome. For several days, Holmes went out at various hours in this attire, but beyond knowing that he was frequenting Hampstead and wasting no time, I knew nothing of his activities. At last, on a stormy evening when a gale shrieked outside, he returned. Casting off his disguise, He sat before the fire and laughed heartily. "You have never noticed any matrimonial tendencies in me, Watson?" "I have not." "Then you'll be interested to hear that I am engaged." "My dear fellow, congrat to Milverton's housemaid." "Good heavens, Holmes." "I had to gather information." "But have you not gone too far?" "It was necessary. I am a plumber named Escott, and my business is flourishing." Every evening we walked and talked. Oh, heavens, those talks! Still, I have achieved my end. I now know Milverton's house as well as I know my own. "But the girl, Holmes." He shrugged his shoulders. "It cannot be helped, my dear Watson. We are hunting very large game. But I am pleased to tell you that there is a rival who will step into my place the moment I turn my back. What a magnificent night! You like this weather? It is exactly what I need. Watson, I intend to burgle Milverton's house tonight." I was breathless, and a cold shiver ran down my spine at the grim determination with which he spoke. Just as a flash of lightning in the night illuminates every detail of a vast landscape, I saw in a mental glance all the consequences that might follow. The capture, the arrest, a distinguished career ending in disgrace, and my best friend in the hands of the loathsome Milverton. "For heaven's sake, Holmes, reconsider," I cried. "My dear friend, you know that I am not a man of rash impulses. I have weighed it all, and I would never resort to such a dangerous measure if any other way were open. Let's look at it sanely. You will surely admit that, morally, my plan is justified. I shall be committing a crime only in the eyes of the law. To rob Milverton's house is no more than to take his pocketbook from him by force. And that was an act in which you yourself were ready to assist me." I thought it over. "Yes," I said, "the act is morally lawful, since our only aim is to take that which Milverton uses for unlawful purposes." "Precisely. And since the act is morally lawful, there remains only the personal risk. But a true gentleman must not think of risk when a woman is in such desperate need of his help. You will find yourself in a very difficult position. That is the risk. I see no other way to obtain the letters. The unfortunate lady has no money, and there is no one among her relatives to whom she can turn. Tomorrow is the last day, and if we do not get the letters tonight, this scoundrel will keep his word and ruin her. Therefore, I must either leave it all to fate or make this final move. Between you and me, Watson, it is a kind of duel between Milverton and myself. In the first exchange of blows, as you saw, the advantage was his, and my reputation and self-respect demand that I continue it. I do not like it, but I suppose it must be so, I said. "When do we start?" "You are not coming with me." "Then you are not going either," I countered. "I give you my word of honor, and I have never broken it in my life, that I shall immediately hail a cab, go to the police, and inform on you, unless you take me with you." "You cannot help me." "How do you know that?" "No one knows what might happen. Whatever the case, my decision is final. You are not the only one who possesses self-respect and prizes his reputation." Holmes appeared annoyed at first, but then his face cleared, and he clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, dear friend, so be it. We have shared a room for many years, and there is no reason to break tradition now. If luck is against us, we shall share a cell together. I must confess, Watson, I have always thought that I would have made a highly efficient criminal. And here, at last, is a brilliant opportunity." Holmes took a neat leather case from a drawer and, opening it, showed me several shining instruments. "This is a first-class, up-to-date burglar's kit. It contains a nickel-plated jemmy, a diamond for glass cutting, master keys, and all the latest devices required by the progress of civilization. Here is also a dark lantern. Everything is in order. Have you any silent shoes? Yes, I have rubber-soled tennis shoes. Excellent. And a mask? I can make a pair out of black silk. I see you have a natural talent for these things. Very good. Make the masks. We shall have some cold supper before we leave. It is now 8:30. At 11, we shall reach Church Row. From there, it is a 15-minute walk to Appledore Towers. We shall begin work before midnight. Milverton is a heavy sleeper and always retires at 10:30. With any luck, we shall be home by 2 o'clock with Lady Eva's letters in our pocket. We put on dress clothes to look like men returning from the theater. At Oxford Street, we hailed a cab and drove to Hampstead. There we paid the driver, and, buttoning our overcoats to the chin, for it was bitterly cold and a biting wind was blowing, we walked along the heath. It is a delicate business, Holmes said. The documents are in Milverton's study, locked in a safe. The study itself adjoins his bedroom. But like many stout men who enjoy robust health, he is a remarkably heavy sleeper. Agatha, that is my fiancée, tells me that nothing short of the cannon would wake her master. Milverton has a devoted secretary who never leaves the study during the day. That is why we have come by night. The house is guarded by a vicious dog, usually let loose, but during my late-night visits to Agatha, I have persuaded her to keep it locked up. Ah, here is the house. That large one, deep within the garden. Let us go through the gates, then to the right behind the laurel bushes. I think it is time to don our masks. Look, there is not a light in any window. Everything is going perfectly. Having put on our masks and transformed into true outlaws, we crept toward the silent, somber house. Along one side ran a covered veranda with several windows and 2 doors. That is his bedroom, Holmes whispered, and right next to it is the door to the study. Unfortunately, it is bolted as well as locked. Opening it would cause too much noise. We must go around to the conservatory, which leads into the drawing room. The conservatory was locked, but Holmes cut a pane of glass and turned the key from the inside. A moment later, he locked the door behind us, and in the eyes of the law, we were now criminals. We were met by the damp, warm air of the winter garden and the heavy, intoxicating scent of exotic plants. Holmes took my hand in the darkness and led me swiftly past bushes whose branches brushed against our faces. My friend possessed a remarkable gift. He could see in the dark. Without letting go of my hand, he opened a door, and I felt us enter a large room that smelled of recent cigar smoke. Holmes moved cautiously, taking care not to strike the furniture. Then he opened another door and closed it behind us. Reaching out, I felt several coats hanging on the wall and realized we had reached the hallway. We walked a little further, and Holmes very quietly opened a door on the right. Something sprang at us, and my heart leaped into my throat. But it was only a cat, and I nearly laughed at my own fright. A fire was glowing in the hearth of this room, and here, too, was the strong scent of tobacco. Holmes entered on tiptoe, waited for me, and then very softly closed the door. We were in Milverton's study. A heavy curtain at the far end concealed the entrance to his bedroom. The fire in the grate burned brightly, illuminating the room. Near the door, I saw an electric switch, but there was no need to turn on the light, even if it had been safe to do so. On one side of the fireplace, a thick portiere covered the bay window we had seen from the outside. On the other side was the door leading to the veranda. In the center of the room stood a writing desk with a swiveling chair upholstered in bright red leather. Opposite, it was a large bookcase topped with a marble bust of Athena. In the corner between the bookcase and the wall stood a large green safe, its polished brass handles reflecting the firelight. Holmes approached it with a noiseless step and examined it. Then he crept to the bedroom door and, pressing his ear to the crack, listened intently. All was silent. Meanwhile, it occurred to me that we should secure a line of retreat through the outer door, and I examined it. To my surprise, it was neither locked nor bolted. I touched Holmes's arm, and he turned his masked face toward the door. I could see that he, too, was surprised. "I don't like it," he whispered in my ear. "I don't understand it. At any rate, we must lose no time. Can I help?" "Yes, stand by the door. If you hear footsteps, slide the bolt, and we shall leave the way we came. If someone enters from the conservatory and our work is done, we shall escape through this door. If we haven't secured the documents yet, we must hide behind the window curtain." "Understood." I nodded and took my station by the door. My initial fear had vanished, replaced by a thrill of keen excitement, such as I had never felt when we were defenders of the law rather than its challengers. The high purpose of our mission, the knowledge that we were moved by chivalrous rather than selfish motives, and the utter contempt we felt for our opponent, all added to the hunter's zest. I felt no guilt. On the contrary, I felt only joy in the sting of danger. I watched Holmes with admiration. He opened his kit and selected the necessary tools with the calm precision of a surgeon before a complex operation. I knew that safe-cracking was a hobby of his, and I understood the grim delight he felt as he stood face to face with that green and gold monster, the dragon that held the reputations of so many noble ladies in its maw. Turning up his dress coat sleeves, his overcoat was laid upon a chair. Holmes took out 2 drills, a jemmy, and several master keys. I stood by the veranda door, my eyes fixed on the other entrances, ready for any emergency, though I had no clear plan of what to do if we were interrupted. For half an hour, Holmes worked with intense concentration, laying down one tool and picking up another with the skill of a master mechanic. Finally, I heard a sharp click. The wide green door swung open, and I caught a glimpse of several packets inside, tied with ribbon and sealed with wax. Holmes took one, but it was difficult to read by the flickering firelight. He drew out his small dark lantern for turning on the lights, so near Milverton's bedroom was too perilous. Suddenly, I saw Holmes lift his head and listen intently. Then, in the blink of an eye, he kicked the safe door shut, snatched up his coat, thrust his tools into his pockets, and dived behind the window curtain, motioning for me to do the same. Hardly had I joined him when I heard what had caught his tighter ear. There was a noise somewhere in the house. A door slammed. Then came the sound of measured, heavy footsteps rapidly approaching us. At the study door, the steps halted. The door swung open. A sharp click marked the turning on of the electric light. The door closed again, and the pungent reek of a strong cigar reached our nostrils. Then the footsteps began to pace to and fro within a few yards of us. At last, they ceased, and a chair creaked. Then came the click of a key in a lock and the rustle of papers. Until then, I had not dared to look out, but now I cautiously parted the curtains and peered through a narrow slit. I knew by the way Holmes pressed against me that he, too, was watching. Directly before us, almost within arm's length, we saw the broad, rounded back of Milverton. It was clear that our calculations regarding his movements had been entirely wrong. He had not gone to his bedroom at all, but had been sitting in some smoking room or billiard room in a distant wing of the house, which was out of our view. His broad, graying head with its glistening bald patch was right before our eyes. He sat leaning back in a red leather chair, his legs stretched out, and a long black cigar jutting upward from his mouth. He wore a wine-colored smoking jacket with a black velvet collar. In his hands, he held a long document which he was reading lazily, blowing out rings of smoke as he did so. His easy manner and comfortable pose suggested that he had settled in the study for a long stay. I felt Holmes's hand slip into mine and give it a reassuring squeeze. He seemed to be telling me that he had foreseen this turn of events and was not alarmed. I did not know if he saw what I could see, namely, that the safe door was not quite closed and that Milverton might notice it at any moment. For my own part, I decided that if he discovered the open safe, I would instantly spring from my hiding place, throw my coat over his head, pin him down, and leave the rest to Holmes. But Milverton never once raised his eyes. He slowly read through the papers in his hand, turning page after page. I hoped that he would retire to his bedroom when he finished the document and his cigar, but before he had done either, something unexpected happened. I noticed that Milverton looked at his watch several times, and once he stood up and sat down again, showing signs of impatience. But it never occurred to me that he might have an appointment at such an unearthly hour. Suddenly, from the direction of the veranda, the faint sound of a footstep reached my ear. Milverton dropped his papers and sat upright in his chair. Presently, there was a light tap at the door. Milverton rose and opened it. "You are half an hour late," he said sharply. So that was the explanation for the open door in Milverton's midnight vigil. We heard the soft rustle of a woman's dress. I had started to close the curtains, as Milverton's face was now turned toward us, but curiosity got the better of me, and I parted them slightly once more. Milverton was back in his chair, his black cigar still jutting arrogantly upwards. In the middle of the room, bathed in the electric light, stood a tall, slim woman in a dark hood fastened under her chin, her face hidden by a veil. She was breathing fast and audibly, and her whole supple figure was trembling with intense emotion. "You have spoiled my night's rest, my dear," said Milverton. "I hope I am to be rewarded for it. Could you not have come earlier?" The woman shook her head. "Well, if you couldn't, you couldn't. You say the Countess treats you ungraciously. Now you have the chance to get even with her. Why, girl, what is the matter? What are you shaking for? There now, pull yourself together. Now to business." He took a note from a drawer. "You say that you have 5 letters which compromise the Countess d'Albert. You want to sell them. I want to buy them. Very good. It only remains to fix the price. I should, of course, like to see the letters, to see if they are really the right ones. Good heavens, is it you?" Without a word, the woman raised her veil and threw back her hood. I saw a beautiful brunette with regular, finely cut features, an aquiline nose, thick black eyebrows over eyes that blazed with hatred, and thin lips curved in a sinister smile. "Yes, it is I," she said, "the woman whose life you ruined." Milverton laughed, but there was fear in his laugh. "You were so obstinate," he said. "Why did you drive me to such extremities? I assure you, I would not hurt a fly of my own accord. But every man must earn his living in his own way. What else could I do? I set a price that was within your means. You would not pay, and so you sent the letters to my husband. It broke the heart of the noblest man who ever lived. I was not worthy to lace his boots, and he died. Do you remember that night, here in this very study, when I begged, I pleaded with you for mercy, and you laughed in my face? You are trying to laugh now, but your lips are trembling. Scoundrel! Cowardly creature! Did you think you would never see me again? It was that very night I learned how to reach you when you are alone. Well, Charles Milverton, what more have you to say?" "Do not imagine that you frighten me," Milverton replied, rising to his feet. "I have only to cry out, and my servants will seize you. But I will be lenient, for your anger is understandable. Leave this house. Let's end this talk." The woman did not move. She kept her hand beneath her cloak, that sinister smile still upon her lips. "You will never ruin another life as you ruin mine. You will never torture another heart as you tortured mine. I shall rid the world of a poisonous snake. Take that, you dog." A small pistol flashed in her hand. One shot, another, and then a third. The barrel was not half a meter from Milverton's chest. He staggered, fell across the table, coughing and clawing at his papers. Then, reeling, he rose and stumbled around the desk. A sixth shot rang out, and he crashed to the floor. "You have killed me," he managed to whisper. The woman looked down at him intently and ground her heel into his face. She looked once more. Milverton neither cried out nor moved. With a rustle of skirts, she vanished into the night, leaving the stifling room filled with the freshness of the evening air. No intervention of ours could have saved the man from his fate. Had it not been for Holmes, who gripped my wrist as the woman sent bullet after bullet into the staggering Milverton, I would have rushed to his aid. I understood the meaning of that firm grasp. This was not our affair. Justice had at last overtaken the villain. We had our own duties and our own goal, which we must not lose sight of. As soon as the woman had disappeared, Holmes moved with swift, silent steps to the inner door and turned the key in the lock. At that same moment, we heard voices and running footsteps within the house. The shots had roused everyone. With perfect composure, Holmes hurried to the safe, scooped out armfuls of letter bundles, and flung them into the fire again and again until the safe was empty. Someone rattled the handle and began to batter at the door. Holmes cast a quick glance around. On Milverton's table lay a blood-stained letter, the messenger of death. Holmes threw that into the fire as well. Then he snatched the key from the outer door, let me out, followed, and locked it behind us. "This way, Watson," he said. "We must scale the garden wall." I could not have imagined that an alarm could spread through a house so quickly. Looking back, I saw every window ablaze with light. The front door was open, and men were running down the drive. The garden was swarming. Someone spotted us as we fled the veranda, shouted, and gave chase. Holmes knew every path, and he sprinted through the bushes and trees with confidence. I kept pace with him, though I could hear the breath of our pursuer close behind. A 6-foot wall barred our way. Holmes vaulted over it. I followed, but as I clambered up, a hand caught my ankle. I kicked myself free, scrambled over the glass-topped summit, and fell face down into the bushes on the other side. Holmes hauled me to my feet, and we raced across the vast Hempstead Heath. We ran for nearly 2 miles before Holmes finally stopped to listen. Absolute silence reigned around us. We had outrun them. We were safe. The next morning, as we smoked our pipes after breakfast, Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard appeared in our modest sitting room. He looked grave and full of importance. "Good morning, Mr. Holmes," he said. "Good morning. Tell me, are you very busy just now?" "Busy enough, but I'm happy to hear you. Could you help us investigate a most interesting case that occurred last night in Hempstead?" "Good heavens!" Holmes cried. "What has happened?" "Murder. A most dramatic and remarkable one. I know how you value such cases, and I should be very much obliged if you would come down to Appledore Towers and assist us. It is an extraordinary crime. We have had our eye on the deceased for some time. Between ourselves, he was a thorough scoundrel. He kept compromising papers in his safe, which he used for blackmail. All those papers were burned by the murderers. Not a single item of value was stolen. One must assume the criminals are from society, People whose only motive was to prevent a public scandal. Were there several of them? Holmes asked. 2. They were nearly caught in the act. We have their footprints and a description. It is 10 to 1 that we find them. The first was very nimble, but the gardener nearly caught the second. He was a man of middle height, strongly built, with a broad face, a thick neck, a mustache, and a mask. That is rather vague, Sherlock Holmes remarked. It might almost describe Watson here. It might indeed. The inspector laughed, finding the idea amusing. It's Watson to a T. I fear I cannot help you, Lestrade, said Holmes. The fact is, I knew this Milverton, and I consider him one of the most dangerous men in London. In my opinion, there are certain crimes which the law cannot reach. Private vengeance is sometimes justified. Do not argue. My mind is made up. My sympathies are with the criminals, not the victim. I will not take this case. Holmes did not mention the tragedy again that morning, but I noticed he was deeply pensive and distracted, like a man trying to recall a fading memory. Suddenly, he sprang from his chair. "By Jove, Watson," he cried. "I have it. Get your hat. Come with me." We hurried down Baker Street, through Oxford Street, and stopped near Regent Circus. There, on the left, was a shop window displaying photographs of famous beauties and celebrities of the day. Holmes's eyes fastened upon one of them, and following his gaze, I saw the portrait of a proud beauty in court dress, a high diamond tiara upon her noble head. I looked at the finely modeled nose, the thick brows, the firm mouth, and the strong little chin. My breath caught as I read the world-renowned name of the great statesman whose wife she was. My eyes met Holmes's. We moved away from the window, and he pressed a finger to his lips,